The void had always been quiet, empty, infinite. But the signal that flickered across the Vanguard sensors cut through that emptiness like a scream. Commander Kael Draven's hand froze above the console as he listened, the hair on his neck standing on end. It wasn't just a distress call. It was agony encoded into electromagnetic pulses, fragmented and chaotic, yet unmistakably human. And it carried a cadence, an undercurrent, that made the air inside the bridge feel heavier. "Commander, you're going to want to hear this," Lieutenant Aaron said, voice tight. He replayed the audio through the ship's speakers. Between static and interference, a voice rose and fell in desperation. A scream folded into broken words. It's coming from the Blackship," he stammered, almost afraid to speak the name aloud. Kael's stomach tightened. The Blackship. He had read every declassified file and rumor, had memorized the fragments that survived years of official denials. It was a ghost, a legend. A vessel lost nearly a decade ago on a mission so secret that even mentioning it could get someone reassigned. Or worse. Some said it had been destroyed by a spatial anomaly, swallowed by a rift in the fabric of space. Others whispered darker tales. A vessel experimented on with alien technology, consumed by its own crew's hubris, or by something that had never belonged to the human sphere. And now, after all these years, it was calling out. Kael stared at the flickering coordinates. The origin of the signal was in a sector long marked dangerous, where nebulae churned and gravitational distortions bent starlight into impossible patterns. Even from this distance, the readings made no sense. Energy readings so intense they didn't match anything in known physics, pulsating in a rhythm that felt almost alive. "Set a course," Kael ordered, his voice steady despite the unease coiling in his gut. "We're going to find out who or what is sending this." The crew hesitated. Aaron exchanged a nervous glance with Mira, the science officer. "Sir, the legends, the reports, people don't come back from that sector, not alive, and the Blackship, it's supposed to be dead." Kael's jaw clenched. "Dead or not, someone or something wants to be found. That's enough. We go, full alert, and prepare for the unexpected." Hours passed as the Vanguard glided through the void. Static hummed faintly across comm channels, lights flickered in the observation deck, and the nebula ahead shimmered with shifting shadows. Time stretched unnaturally, each second loaded with tension. The deeper they moved, the more the energy readings spiked and waned, as if the ship itself was watching them approach, adjusting, testing, and then it appeared. The Blackship, a silhouette in the darkness, massive, silent, and impossibly still. Its hull was scarred and pitted from cosmic radiation, yet intact, untouched by time in a way that should have been impossible. Sensors spiked erratically as the Vanguard drew closer. The energy signature around the vessel pulsed faintly, a heartbeat echoing in the instruments and deep in Kael's chest. "Commander," Mira's voice was a whisper, "it's alive." Kael didn't answer. He could see it drifting in the black void like a wounded leviathan. There was something conscious in its presence, something aware of them, and even across the distance, it radiated an urgency, a panic, a cry that seemed to reach past the metal hulls and resonate directly in their minds. "Prepare the boarding shuttle," Kael finally ordered, voice low but firm. "We're going to find out what made the Blackship scream." The crew moved efficiently, trained hands preparing the shuttle and equipment, but the tension was palpable. No one spoke above a murmur. The Blackship wasn't just a ship, it was a relic, a warning, and perhaps a tomb. Kael felt it in the pit of his stomach. Something had survived, or something had waited all these years for someone to arrive. As the shuttle detached, drifty, silently toward the colossal silhouette, the void seemed to contract. Stars warped in the distance, bending around the nebula's strange currents. The pulse of the Blackship's energy grew stronger, syncopated with the shuttle's approach, almost like it was acknowledging their presence. Kael's fingers brushed the controls, steadying the craft. Yet his mind raced. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the epicenter of something that didn't just exist in space, but in consciousness itself. And that consciousness was watching, waiting, maybe even learning. The shuttle's lights cut through the darkness, illuminating the hull. Every scar, dent, and irregularity told a story of battles, of forces beyond reckoning. And yet, for all its damage, the ship pulsed faintly, as if it still had a heartbeat. Kael's eyes narrowed. The legends were true. The Blackship had survived somehow, and it had been screaming across the void for years. "Steady," he whispered to himself. tightening his grip. "Let's see who or what is still alive inside." The stars outside were silent witnesses as the shuttle closed in, carrying Kael and his crew toward the last cry of a ship that should have been dead. The shuttle detached from the vanguard and drifted silently toward the Blackship, its massive silhouette looming like a phantom in the void. Kael Draven gripped the controls tightly, eyes scanning the hull through the shuttle's lights. The ship was scarred and pitted, its dark metal scarred from years in the void, yet remarkably intact, as though some unseen force had preserved it. Sensors were off the charts. Energy readings spiked unpredictably, pulsing faintly in rhythm with the shuttle's proximity, almost as if the Blackship was alive and aware of their approach. "Commander," Lieutenant Aaron's voice was tense, barely above a whisper, "I don't think this is just a ship. It's reacting to us. Every movement we make, the readings shift. It's watching." Kael didn't answer immediately. The eerie glow from the ship reflected in his eyes. Something was wrong. The void outside was silent, but inside the shuttle, a pressure weighed on their chests, subtle but insistent, like an invisible hand pressing against their minds. "Keep your focus," he said finally. "We're here to find out what happened. Remember your training. Stay aware." As they docked, the shuttle's magnetic locks engaged with a soft hum, and the boarding team floated into the Blackship's corridors. The interior was unnervingly intact. Lights flickered, panels hummed with residual power. And yet there was no crew, no sounds except the faint thrum of the ship's systems. But even as they moved cautiously, Kael noticed the subtle distortions. Walls seemed to stretch slightly, corners that should have been straight bent just enough to unnerve the mind, and shadows that moved independently of the team's own movements. "Commander, I swear I just saw someone move down that hallway," Mira, the science officer, whispered, her voice tight with apprehension. She pointed toward a corridor that seemed to stretch impossibly into darkness. Kael raised a hand, signaling calm. "It's the ship, Mira. Its systems. They're interacting with our presence. Treat everything with caution. Nothing here is what it seems." As they proceeded deeper, the shuttle's lights flickered again, and for a moment, Kael could have sworn he saw figures dart across the corridors, silhouettes of crew members long dead, frozen in expressions of panic and despair. Instruments recorded readings that shouldn't exist, ghostly thermal imprints, fluctuating grav field anomalies, and energy pulses with a subtle intelligence behind them. Aaron moved toward a terminal, his fingers trembling. "Commander, these are the Blackship's logs, not just ordinary records. The experimental drive they installed. It wasn't just a propulsion system, it was designed to manipulate space-time itself. And something went horribly wrong." Before Kael could ask what, a low thrum reverberated through the walls. The corridors seemed to stretch and twist, forming impossible loops. Crew members froze, staring at walls that weren't there moments ago. The Blackship's energy signature pulsed violently, syncing with the fears and memories in their minds. Every heartbeat felt amplified, echoing in the metallic corridors. Then came the first audible scream, though not through any speaker. It vibrated directly in their skulls, a psychic resonance that twisted reality, bending their perception. Kael staggered, gripping the railing as images flashed before him, the last moments of the vanished Blackship crew, replayed in fragments. Faces contorted in terror, hands reaching for something unseen, voices screaming in a chorus of panic and despair. "It's alive," Mira whispered, voice trembling. "It's feeding on us. It's using our minds." Kael clenched his jaw. "No, it's testing us. Document everything. Do not give in to fear. It can only manipulate what we let it." Aaron's face went pale. "Commander, it's learning from us. Every hesitation, every glance, every thought, it's adapting." Kael's grip tightened on the railing. They moved deeper into the Blackship, each step heavier than the last. Corridors warped, gravity fluctuated, and the shadows became more insistent. For a brief moment, Kael saw Lyra, the missing crew member he had once lost years ago, her image flickering before him, reaching out. Then it was gone, leaving only the pulse of the energy signature, mocking and alive. The shuttle's sensors flickered as the psychic scream intensified. The ship seemed to resonate with their fear, amplifying it, bending it back toward them. Kael felt a tight pressure in his chest, a tugging in his mind that made him question reality itself. Every crew member struggled, some whispering memories not their own, others frozen in silent terror. Kael straightened. "We push forward. We find the core of this anomaly and understand it, or it will consume us all." This is what we came for. Stay close, stay alert, and hold on to reality. The corridors ahead shimmered as if alive, twisting into shapes that shouldn't exist. And at the heart of the Blackship, beyond flickering shadows and warped hallways, the source of the pulse waited. An intelligence born of ambition, fear, and cosmic experimentation, patient and relentless. Kael swallowed hard. The Blackship's last cry had led them here, into the lair of something that was no longer a ship, but a living, thinking force. And somewhere in that pulsing energy, a secret waited, terrifying, unyielding, and hungry. The deeper Kael and his team ventured into the Blackship, the more the vessel seemed to breathe around them. Corridors warped subtly, their geometry bending and stretching in impossible ways, and the pulse of the energy field grew stronger, echoing in their skulls like a living heartbeat. It was not merely a ship anymore. It had become a predator, and they were prey. The air seemed heavier, though the shuttle systems recorded nothing abnormal. Their instruments couldn't measure the subtle distortions in perception, the invisible tug at their consciousness. "Commander," Lieutenant Aaron's voice trembled. "It's watching us. It's learning. Every hesitation, every reaction, every movement we make, it adapts." Kael tightened his jaw, fighting the creeping unease. "Then we don't hesitate. We move with purpose. Focus on the mission, not what your mind wants you to see." Even as he spoke, hallucinations began to crawl into the edges of their vision. Shadows darted at the corners, bending impossibly around walls and ceilings. Flickers of light revealed figures, crew members from the vanished Blackship, frozen in terror, their mouths agape in silent screams. The team heard whispers, distorted echoes of past regrets and failures, voices that seemed to come from inside their own heads. Mira pressed her hands to her ears, gasping, "It's showy. Me, everything I've ever done wrong," she stammered. I can't tell what's real anymore." Kael's grip on his comm console tightened. "Ignore it. Document the readings, yes, but do not respond. It can only control what you give it." They reached a junction where the corridors folded unnaturally, impossible angles converging as if the ship itself were flexing around them. Kael scanned the energy signature, noting that it pulsed in direct response to the crew's emotional states. Fear amplified it, hesitation fed it. Every heartbeat seemed magnified, thrumming through the hull like a drumbeat of their own mortality. Aaron approached a control terminal, his hands trembling as he accessed the Blackship's logs. "Commander, the experimental drive. It wasn't just a propulsion system. It was a manipulation of space-time. And something went wrong. The crew, they didn't die naturally. They were absorbed into it, partially, into the drive itself." Kael's stomach churned. That explained the psychic resonance, the distortions in the corridors, the flickering specters. This was no mere ship. It had become a crucible, a living entity, a parasite born of human ambition and cosmic physics, feeding on fear, memory, and life energy. A sudden pulse of the energy field slammed through the junction, bending light and gravity. Crew members froze, eyes wide in terror, as hallucinations intensified. The corridor seemed to fold over itself, trapping them in an endless loop where shadows screamed and whispered all at once. The entity had learned from them. It was mimicking their fears, their regrets, their lost hopes, warping reality in response. "It's testing us," Kael said through gritted teeth. "Everything it shows you, it's a lure. Don't give in. Stay close, stay alert, and above all, hold on to your will." The heart of the Blackship awaited them, the experimental drive core pulsating violently with alien energy. As Kael approached, the entity extended its influence, warping corridors, bending space, and intruding into their minds. The hallucinations intensified. Crew members saw themselves failing their loved ones, dying in agony, screaming for help they could never give. Mira screamed, clutching her head, as visions of past mistakes tore at her sanity. Kael fought to keep his own mind anchored. He realized the entity was intelligent, parasitic, and patient. It thrived on their fear, their doubt, and their curiosity. Every hesitation strengthened it. Every glance at the horrors it conjured fed its power. And yet, at the same time, he understood that their resolve, their willpower, was a weapon. The entity whispered, or perhaps projected, its voice directly into his consciousness: surrender. Become part of me. Last cry, an echo of human desperation, cosmic ambition, and something beyond comprehension, resonated in their minds. Kael realized the truth. The scream, the hallucinations, the twisting corridors, they were all part of the entity. It was patient, cunning, and eternal, and they had only begun to scratch the surface. What waited in the core of the Blackship would demand courage, sacrifice, and the very essence of their humanity to survive. The corridors of the Blackship twisted violently as Kael and his team advanced toward the experimental drive core, the source of the entity's parasitic consciousness. Every step was a battle against gravity that warped unpredictably, walls that shifted like liquid, and hallucinations that pressed on their minds with the weight of their worst fears. The entity pulsed around them, a living, malevolent presence, learning from their every thought, every hesitation, every tremor of doubt. "Commander," Mira's voice was raw with terror. I can't hold it. Every memory, every mistake I've ever made, it's all here and it's real." Kael's jaw clenched. "Hold on. None of it is real unless we let it be. Focus on the override sequence. We finish this or none of us leave alive." The energy field surrounding the drive core throbbed in response to their fear, pulsating like a heartbeat of the damned. Shadows writhed in impossible angles, and whispers echoed directly into their consciousness, mixing the memories of the crew with twisted alien interpretations of time itself. Lieutenant Aaron staggered, clutching his head. "It's learning from us faster than we can react. Every choice we make, it's shaping the ship." Kael swallowed hard and steadied himself. The entity wasn't just feeding on their fear, it was adapting, testing, evolving with every passing second. The override sequence they had prepared was their only chance to contain it, to prevent it from escaping into the void and consuming anything that crossed its path. He reached the control panel, sweat running down his temple, and initiated the sequence, fingers trembling as the alien interface responded erratically. A wave of raw psychic energy surged outward from the core, bending light, twisting corridors, and distorting the shuttle's sensors. The entity screamed, not audibly, but through a psychic resonance that rattled their bones, a pulse of anguish and rage that clawed at their minds. Crew members fell to their knees, eyes wide, as visions of every death, every failure, every forgotten sorrow pressed into them. Kael's own thoughts blurred with the screams and hallucinations, and yet he held firm. He realized the entity was testing him, tempting him with images of what he most desired: lost comrades, undone mistakes, the faintest chance to rewrite the past. But he could not afford to falter. His crew depended on him, and the Blackship itself had to be contained before it could reach the void beyond. "Focus!" Kael shouted. "This ends now!" The core pulsed violently in response, energy rippling outward as the override took effect. The corridors buckled and bent, light exploding in jagged streaks, yet Kael continued, guiding his crew toward the heart of the anomaly. One by one, they interfaced with the drive systems, stabilizing the sequence and anchoring the entity's energy. It shrieked, twisting the ship violently, but they held fast. For a tense moment, time seemed to suspend. Reality quivered like a fragile membrane. Then, with a final, cataclysmic pulse, the entity's resistance collapsed. The psychic screams faded into a hollow echo, the walls straightened, and the corridors resumed their impossible geometry. The energy field around the drive core dimmed, no longer a predator feeding on their fear, but a subdued, inert remnant of its former self. Kael slumped against the console, breathing heavily. Mira and Aaron were pale and trembling, but alive. They had survived the Blackship's last cry. The override sequence had contained the entity, at least for now, neutralizing its threat beyond the ship. But the scars it left, the memories of their fears, the glimpses of potential futures, and the psychic echoes of the lost crew, would linger forever. As the boarding team returned to the shuttle, the Blackship floated silently in the void, its hull battered and scarred, yet still intact. Kael stared at the shadowy vessel, a shiver running down his spine. The entity had been patient, cunning, and intelligent, and though they had subdued it, fragments of its consciousness might still linger, dormant and waiting. The shuttle docked with the Vanguard, and the crew moved aboard, silent and haunted. The stars outside seemed impossibly bright and indifferent, a stark contrast to the horrors they had just endured. Kael walked to the observation deck, staring at the distant nebula where the Blackship remained, a ghostly silhouette against the canvas of space. He could almost feel the ship watching them, a lingering awareness that refused to die. Mira approached quietly. "Do you think it's really gone?" Kael shook his head slowly. "No, some things don't die, Mira. They wait, patient, eternal. The Blackship's last cry, it's not over, not really. We've survived it, but it's still out there somewhere, waiting for the next curiosity, the next mistake." The crew didn't speak, each lost in the quiet horror of their shared experience. The Blackship floated silently, a relic of human ambition and cosmic terror, its last cry a warning to all who would dare traverse the void unprepared. Kael knew they had been lucky, perhaps the luckiest crew in history. But the universe was vast, indifferent, and filled with forces beyond comprehension. As the Vanguard moved away, Kael allowed himself one final thought. Some mysteries were not meant to be solved. Some cries not meant to be answered. The Blackship would remain, patient and eternal, a shadow on the edge of human knowledge, reminding them that curiosity can be both a gift and a curse. The void was silent once more, but somewhere, far beyond the reach of light and sound, the Blackship's echo lingered, waiting,